Hello and welcome. This is View from the Top. I'm Modele Sharafa Yusuf, and I'm glad that you could join us. It's what everybody's talking about. All receipts have dipped in recent times, and this has affected revenue allocation to the states. Many are now being forced to acknowledge what has always been known, that the only way to sustain development is to depend on taxation to generate revenue with which the government can plan properly. Lagos State is reputed to be the only state in Nigeria that is financially independent, or that can be financially independent of the monthly allocation from the federation account. It is also the only state that generates internally more revenue than the monthly allocation from the federation account. Lagos State is said to currently receive about an average of 8 billion from the federation account on a monthly basis, a drop from about 12 to 14 billion in 2013. Out of this 8 billion or so that it receives monthly, 6 billion naira is spent on the payment of salaries. However, the internally generated revenue of Lagos State now stands at about 23 billion naira monthly. The IGR accounts for over 65% of Lagos State's government's revenue. At a time when there are fears that dwindling revenue from crude oil sales may get worse, Lagos State is the model in tax administration and development in the country. The state, we hear, is presently able to meet, to a considerable degree, the enormous demands for infrastructure and services from the exploding population presently put at about 20 million people. Mr. Babatunde Fowler is the executive chairman of the Lagos State Internal Revenue Service, and he spearheaded the tax reform agenda that remarkably improved the effectiveness of tax administration in Lagos, growing the state's revenue from about 30 billion in 2003 to over 278 billion currently. Mr. Fowler, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Here's a brief profile before we launch into our conversation. Mr. Tunde Fowler was born on 12 August 1956. He studied at the University of Wisconsin, from where he obtained his first bachelor's degree, a BSc in economics with a minor in political science in 1978. He completed a second bachelor's degree program at the California State University, Los Angeles, and also a Master of Business Administration degree from the California State University, Dominguez Hills in 1981. Mr. Fowler started out as a marketing intern with Avon Products Incorporated, New York. He later worked at Johnson & Johnson in the United States before being transferred to Johnson & Johnson, Nigeria. He joined Commercial Bank Credit Leone, Nigeria in 1984 and left in 1990 to join Chartered Bank. In 2005, he joined the Lagos State government and was appointed the Pioneer Permanent Secretary, Executive Chairman of the Lagos State Board of Internal Revenue. Mr. Fowler is an honorary senior member of the Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria and was conferred with a professional honorary doctorate degree in June 2007 by the Irish International University. He's also a fellow of both the Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria and Business Management Association. Mr. Fowler, the bill to make the Board of Internal Revenue an autonomous and self-accounting entity was passed into law in 2006. How exactly did this contribute to the success that you've recorded?
Well, I think to a large degree it did. What the bill gave us was autonomy. It meant that we could recruit the right type of staff. It meant that if any staff was found wanting, we could also fire that staff. So apart from staff having the same vision, they also knew that they had the responsibility to perform. That's not to say that civil servants don't have that responsibility, but it is almost, they say it's almost impossible to sack a civil servant. So some civil servants do not put in as much as they should. And with the bill that was passed, it made the agency competitive. It put them on the same level as private organizations are. And so the staff, apart from earning a higher salary, also knew that they are going to be judged by a different set of rules.
No, a lot has been made of the electronic tax certificates. Has it really helped to block all of the leakages completely?
Well, as far as possible, it has. We still have a few cases whereby individuals who don't want to go to the bank will decide to give a friend, an official, money to pay on their behalf. And sometimes this money is diverted. But once you go to the bank, it shouldn't take more than 4 or 5 minutes, pay your money to the state government, then automatically that goes into the state account. And we have said it both in the media. We also have a policy which was approved by the governor that no civil servant, no public servant should receive funds on behalf of a taxpayer in the aim of paying it into the bank for that taxpayer. It's very easy to make the payments. The taxpayer will first of all get a teller or receipt from the bank, followed up by an official receipt by the Lagos State government, and that tells you for sure that your money has gone into the account of the Lagos State government. So the electronic system also gives you history of all your payments. Once payments have been made, any amount that you have paid to the Lagos State government, be it a charge, a tax, a levy, consent fees, you can print all that out at the touch of a button.
One of the things I find interesting about the Lagos State tax system is the do-it-yourself tax assessment.
Yeah.
How is this helping you to get the revenue that you want? And do you think that government is getting its full due?
Well, to a large degree. Now, when we introduced that in Lagos, it was based on two factors. We had reached the point where we had educated the people on the payment of taxes. We had seen a desire for some people to pay taxes, but it was not convenient. Secondly, some people thought that in computing how much tax to pay was rocket science. So we simplified the process. We have a chart at the back of a one-page form, whereby if you're good in mathematics, Form 6, Class 6, secondary school mathematics, you can sit down based on your income, compute your taxes, fill out a form, and pay your taxes to the government. And that's what applies in most other developed countries, in the US, in Europe and all that. You can actually do your own tax returns. You don't need a consultant to do it. And we found out that a lot of people who desired to pay taxes but thought that it was difficult to compute the correct amount of taxes, with the self-assessment, it's brought in convenience. It's eased the system, and we do have thousands of people every year that just fill the form and pay their taxes.
You know, Nigerian tax authorities, not just the Lagos State tax authorities, face the challenge of widespread tax evasion, which is motivated in some cases by complaints about corruption and the poor quality of services. It's also been said that only a negligible percentage of Nigerians bother to pay tax, and that many who do pay don't, really declare their true income. Do you agree that one of the reasons for that is that many people don't really know what government is doing with their taxes?
Well, if you're talking about that in general terms, I will agree with you. But if we're focusing on Lagos, it's a different story. In what we call the organized private sector, those are organizations that are members of MAN, of NECA, public institutions. We have over a 98% compliance rate, meaning that even without us auditing their books on their own, they pay 98% of all taxes due to government. Now, the informal sector, which is made up of people that work for themselves, the market area, and other sectors of the economy, we do have a large percentage, maybe about 3.5 to 4 million people who are not yet in the tax net. But you have to be mindful what these people do. We have drivers, we have house guards, we have cooks at home, we have nannies, and people who have domestic jobs. And basically everyone who earns an income should pay a tax. So what we expect these individuals to do is to pay at least 1,000 naira per year to government, because based on their salary, that is what it would come to. But it will also give them the added advantage of having a tax card, which can serve as an ID. It will also let them realize that they are being considered, because these people are allowed to vote. So if they're allowed to vote, they should also be allowed to pay tax, and let them feel as part of what we call the Commonwealth. So anytime they see government working for them, they can be proud to say, I've paid my tax. My 1,000 naira is in that road, or in that bridge, or in that school, or that hospital that they're attending.
You know, many people don't believe that the big problem that you have are those types of people that you just mentioned,
They're not a problem. We're just saying they should come on board. What they might bring on board may not be much, But what it will do for them as individuals is far greater. People have the perception that the so-called rich don't pay their taxes.
Exactly. It was where I was going to, that it's really the rich people who try to evade taxes. I've seen business premises sealed up by your organization, but never seen anybody jailed for tax evasion, especially the elites who are suspected, as I said, of being the greatest tax defaulters. I'm sure there are laws in the books, but do we really have the kind of system that can bring people and companies who evade taxes to justice?
No, definitely. For the corporate organizations, it's a whole lot easier. And that's why you see them being sealed up. We do take them to court. We get court judgments to close down their businesses, and we do that. For the high net, in quote, individuals, sometimes it's a bit more tricky because some of these individuals own businesses. They may decide to use their business to meet most of their needs. For example, you own a company, you may decide your company rent is paid by your business, the car you drive is paid by your business, and just about anything that you need to do, even buy the food you eat at home, could be an expense on the business. And that's where FIRS, the Federal Inland Revenue Service, and the states have to work together. Because if they expense most of those items, then there'll be nothing left under payee, or very little left. You'll find out some high net, in quote, individuals celebrating their 40th or 50th birthday. By the time we investigate, we'll find out that it was a business expense. And they'll tell you that, well, he's a businessman, he invited all his business associates, and there's nothing wrong in that. But it's now left for FIRS to determine whether that is an acceptable business expense on the business or not. And that takes it out of the purview of state tax.
Do explain the difference between tax avoidance and tax evasion and where the lines begin to get blurred.
Okay, now, simply put, tax evasion is a criminal case. And when we say tax evasion, if, for example, you earn 5 million naira, but you declare that you earn 2.5 million, you try to evade the payment of tax on the higher amount. That's evasion. Now, avoidance is when you use the law to your advantage. And let me use a simple example. Now, before the consolidated tax system that we have now, people are allowed to have certain benefits. Used to have reliefs on your housing, reliefs for your canteen, reliefs for insurance, and different things. So if you're going to avoid such things, then you have what you call BIK, which is benefit in kind, and you're going to try and avoid such things. There's a percentage that we can tax for what we call benefits in kind. And if for whatever reason you decide that your house rent should be paid by your organization, and they pay 20 million per annum, but the true value of that property is 30 million, then that means that you're avoiding the payment on 30 million and you're paying it on 20 million as BIK. So, except, and some of those things are very subjective. A real estate agent might tell you an apartment is worth $60,000, in quotes. Another will tell you it's worth $50,000, in quotes, in terms of rent. So there are laws that guide it, but there are some gray areas. And so you can use those gray areas to reduce the amount of tax you pay to government.
So the taxman just takes what you give, to make everybody's life a little easier.
We have what you call deemed income. If it falls out a certain percentage, then we'll insist on what should be paid as taxes.